What happened to Simon Cowell? The man once known as the sharp-tongued kingmaker of reality TV, feared and admired in equal measure, now faces whispers of illness, a drastically changed appearance, and a quieter life off-camera. His shocking transformation has left fans wondering, how did the ruthless judge of global fame become almost unrecognizable today? Before he became the world's most feared and celebrated talent judge, Simon Cowell was just another kid growing up in London, born in October 1959 to a middle-class family. His father, Eric Cowell, worked in the music industry as an executive at EMI, while his mother, Julie, was a ballet dancer and socialite. The mix of strict discipline from his father and glamour from his mother created a strange foundation, one foot in the world of rules and structure, the other in dreams and show business. From the start, Simon was restless, impatient with authority, and allergic to traditional paths. School never suited him. He was bright but often disruptive, unwilling to follow the rigid routines of formal education. Teachers complained about his attitude, but Simon's rebellion wasn't laziness, it was boredom. He wanted life to move faster, to be louder, to have more at stake. That craving for risk would become the signature of his career. In his early 20s, through his father's connections, Simon found a way into the music industry. He started at EMI as a mailroom clerk, literally pushing carts of records and delivering packages. It wasn't glamorous, but he watched, listened, and learned. The business of selling music fascinated him more than the music itself. Where others saw art, he saw patterns. What made people buy, what made a song stick in someone's head, and how timing could create or kill a star. After bouncing between odd jobs and failed ventures, Simon took a bold step. In the 1980s, he co-founded Fanfare Records, an independent label. For a brief moment, he tasted success by signing acts like Sinita, who scored hits in the UK. The thrill of being the one to spot and package talent gave him a rush he never forgot. But the bubble burst. Fanfare collapsed, and Simon was left broke, moving back into his parents' house. Many would have quit after such a fall, but for Simon, failure was a brutal but invaluable education. This was when he sharpened his instincts. He learned to read audiences like an open book, to know exactly when they'd cheer and when they'd roll their eyes. He also discovered something about himself. He didn't need to be loved, he needed to be right. That hunger for control, paired with an unshakable belief in his vision, would soon catapult him into the public eye. By the early 1990s, Simon was back in the industry, this time with BME, where he signed novelty acts and pop groups. While critics scoffed, Simon laughed all the way to the bank. Acts like Robson and Jerome and Westlife became massive commercial successes, proving his uncanny ability to turn trends into gold. The seeds of his reputation were planted. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a showman disguised as a producer. Then came television. Simon saw that talent competitions could be more than just singing, they could be theater. He stepped into the spotlight as a judge on Pop Idol in the UK in 2001. His blunt critiques, delivered with icy calm and ruthless honesty, shocked audiences. Contestants broke down in tears, viewers gasped, and yet ratings soared. Simon Cowell had finally found his stage. The man who once pushed mail carts was now shaping culture itself, armed with nothing more than a microphone and a razor-sharp tongue. By the early 2000s, Simon Cowell had transformed from a behind-the-scenes record executive into a cultural force. His sharp tongue, perfectly timed eye rolls, and deadpan delivery became television gold. When American Idol premiered in 2002, Cowell wasn't just another judge, he was the show's gravitational center. Viewers tuned in as much for the performances as for his scathing critiques. Where other judges offered encouragement, Simon offered brutal honesty, often in the form of one-liners that cut deeper than any scorecard. America was stunned. Here was a British man who didn't care about politeness, who treated mediocrity with disdain, and who openly mocked contestants on live television. It was outrageous and irresistible. The numbers told the story. American Idol became the highest-rated show in the United States for nearly a decade, at its peak drawing over 30 million viewers per episode. That audience size gave Simon a kind of power few in television have ever wielded. His words could make or break careers overnight. Kelly Clarkson, the very first Idol winner, went on to global superstardom, and Simon's endorsement was part of the rocket fuel. He became a star maker in real time, visible to millions. But Simon wasn't just content being a judge. He was a strategist. Recognizing the global appetite for talent shows, he created his own franchises. The X Factor, launched in the UK in 2004, expanded his empire. This was where acts like One Direction, Leona Lewis, and Little Mix were born. Simon didn't just sign artists, he created global phenomena. One Direction, assembled by Cowell during the X Factor auditions, went on to become the world's biggest boy band of the 2010s. It was Simon's masterstroke, not just finding talent, but constructing it like a pop architect. His influence spread across continents. From Britain's Got Talent to America's Got Talent, Cowell became a household name worldwide. He was the face of an entire era of television, where ordinary people dreamed of extraordinary fame, and Simon stood at the gate, deciding who could pass. His clipped, sarcastic remarks, often dismissed as cruelty, were actually a form of theater. He knew television was about drama, and he provided it in spades. Financially, he was unstoppable. By the mid-2010s, Forbes regularly ranked him among the highest-paid celebrities, with annual earnings in the tens of millions. He purchased luxury mansions in Beverly Hills, London, and Malibu. His cars, his lifestyle, his very presence screamed success. In interviews, he embraced his image as the villain, calling himself honest rather than mean, but privately he relished the role. Simon Cowell had become bigger than any contestant. He was a brand, a cultural archetype, the ruthless judge who gave voice to what audiences were secretly thinking. And then there was the cultural impact. Cowell's shows dominated primetime schedules across countries, and his influence reshaped music charts. At one point, nearly every UK Christmas #1 single was tied to the X Factor. His acts sold hundreds of millions of records. He had turned reality TV into a pipeline for global music domination. In the 2000s and early 2010s, Simon Cowell wasn't just riding the wave of pop culture, he was steering it. At his peak, Simon was untouchable. To millions of fans and aspiring stars, he was both executioner and kingmaker. To networks, he was a guarantee of blockbuster ratings. To the music industry, he was a factory of hits. For Simon Cowell, the kid once delivering packages at EMI, it was the realization of every risk he had ever taken. He wasn't just at the top of his career, he was shaping the culture of an entire generation. Every empire has cracks, and Simon Cowell's glittering reign was no exception. By the mid-2010s, the shine of talent competitions began to fade. Audiences that once rushed to watch American Idol or The X Factor were drifting to streaming platforms and social media. Suddenly, YouTube and TikTok allowed anyone to showcase their talent without facing Simon's judgment. The gatekeeper was losing his gates. Ratings reflected the shift. The X Factor UK, once a cultural juggernaut, slipped year after year until it was finally canceled in 2018 after nearly 2 decades. American Idol itself lost steam, eventually leaving Fox in 2016. Even though Cowell still had America's Got Talent, the sense of dominance was gone. He was still powerful, but the television landscape had moved on. At the same time, public perception began to change. What once felt refreshing, his brutal honesty, started to feel unnecessarily cruel to younger audiences. The cultural tone was shifting toward empathy, inclusivity, and encouragement. Simon's icy persona, once celebrated, began to seem out of touch. Memes painted him as cold-hearted, and critics accused him of exploiting contestants for drama. The villain role that made him famous was now weighing him down. Personal setbacks also struck. In 2020, Simon suffered a devastating electric bike accident at his Malibu home, breaking his back in multiple places. He required extensive surgery and rehabilitation, disappearing from television for months. Fans who saw the once commanding judge suddenly weakened by injury were shocked. It was a reminder that even the most untouchable figures are human. Then came whispers of declining health and the visible changes in his appearance. His face looked drastically different in public appearances, fueling speculation about cosmetic procedures, aging, and later, even illness. The tabloids were relentless, dissecting every photograph. For a man who once controlled the spotlight, losing control of his image was a bitter twist. Simon Cowell, who had built his empire on confidence and dominance, now faced an unfamiliar script. Declining ratings, shifting cultural values, physical injuries, and constant rumors. The man who once seemed invincible was suddenly vulnerable. The fall wasn't dramatic in a single scandal, but rather a slow erosion in empire chipped away by time, changing tastes, in the fragility of the body itself. After the cracks appeared, Simon Cowell's empire entered a quieter, more uncertain chapter. He was still present on television, yes, but the aura of invincibility had faded. The X Factor, once the crown jewel of his brand, disappeared from UK screens in 2018. Its absence marked the end of an era where Cowell dictated the pop charts every December. For longtime fans, it was like watching the fall of a king who had ruled unchallenged for nearly 2 decades. The press, always eager to feast on weakness, circled relentlessly. Every new photo of Simon sparked commentary, his slimmer frame, his changing face, his apparent fatigue. For a man who had built a career out of controlling images and crafting stars, being reduced to speculation about his own looks was a cruel irony. Rumors ranged from cosmetic surgery gone wrong to more serious whispers of illness. Yet Cowell remained largely silent, refusing to let the tabloids write his story for him. Injury recovery kept him away from the spotlight at critical moments. The 2020 bike accident had not only caused physical pain, but had also forced him into seclusion during the height of his rehabilitation. For fans, the long absence was disorienting. When he returned, he was noticeably different, leaner, older, less fiery. The contrast with the Simon of the 2000s, swaggering in tight t-shirts and flashing sly grins, could not have been more stark. Meanwhile, the television landscape itself no longer revolved around him, and streaming platforms produced their own music competition shows, and TikTok influencers became the new tastemakers. The cultural monopoly Cowell once held slipped through his fingers. His name was no longer automatically tied to the hottest new acts. In fact, for younger generations, Simon Cowell was less the kingmaker and more a relic of a television era they hadn't lived through. Still, Simon wasn't completely gone. Britain's Got Talent and America's Got Talent continued to feature him, but his role often felt more ceremonial than dominant. He remained the face of the franchise, but younger judges and viral contestants now grabbed the headlines. His piercing critiques, once the central drama, were softened, at times even drowned out by changing cultural expectations. The Cowell of today was less feared tyrant and more elder statesman of reality TV. For audiences, this partial disappearance was unsettling. Here was a man who had once seemed larger than life, reduced to the background of a stage he had built. His retreat from the public spotlight wasn't total, but it was profound enough to create a sense of absence. The mystery of what was happening off-screen, his health, his personal life, his future, became more intriguing than the shows he judged. Fans whispered, speculated, and waited, as if bracing for the next big reveal in a saga that had once been so public, but was now shrouded in shadows. Today, Simon Cowell is living a life that feels almost unrecognizable compared to the towering figure he once was. Once the unstoppable king of television talent shows, he is now a man marked by fragility, both in body and in reputation. The public image of Simon Cowell in 2025 is a striking contrast. He still walks onto the America's Got Talent stage, but he does so with the shadow of illness and the weight of time etched on his face. In recent years, reports have surfaced that Simon has been battling health problems, including whispers of a cancer diagnosis in 2023. While details remain private, the rumors have fueled a narrative of vulnerability. Viewers who see him on AGT today can't help but notice the changes. The gauntness of his face, the slower pace of his movements, the quiet fatigue in his once commanding voice. For a man who built his empire on confidence and domination, this transformation has left audiences stunned. Physically, the changes are undeniable. Gone is the image of Simon in his trademark tight black t-shirts, arms crossed with an unshakable smirk. In his place stands a thinner, visibly aged man. His face, often scrutinized by tabloids for cosmetic alterations, now bears the unmistakable signs of wear and illness. The glitz of his Beverly Hills lifestyle seems muted, overshadowed by the reality of mortality. Fans who once feared his sharp tongue now find themselves worried for his health, yet even as his body falters, his drive remains. Simon continues to appear on America's Got Talent, where his critiques still carry weight. In one recent episode, a contestant shocked him by tattooing his face across their back, and his wide-eyed reaction reminded audiences of the Simon they remembered. Dramatic, witty, capable of stealing the spotlight with a single look. These flashes of the old Cowell show that the performer within him has not disappeared. He knows the cameras are watching, and he still knows how to give them a moment. At the same time, Simon is preparing for something new. Simon Cowell, The Next Act, a documentary series set to release in December 2025. Marketed as an intimate look at his career and his struggles, it promises to reveal the man behind the myth, the scars of his accidents, the toll of illness, and perhaps even the regrets that shaped him. It is a symbolic pivot from the architect of other people's stories to the subject of his own. For decades, he judged others. Now the world is ready to judge him. In his personal life, Simon has shifted as well. Once known as a playboy bachelor flaunting yachts and romances, he now lives a more subdued existence with his fiancée, Lauren Silverman, and their son, Eric, named after Simon's late father. Parenthood, combined with the humbling reality of health scares, has softened his once arrogant edge. He speaks openly about cherishing family, valuing time, and not taking life for granted, words that would have seemed unimaginable from the ruthless Cowell of the 2000s. Financially, Simon remains wealthy, but his priorities have shifted. Instead of chasing the next pop sensation, he is more interested in legacy, how his shows reshape popular culture, how he discovered talents who defined a generation, and how his name will endure after he leaves the stage for good. This is the paradox of Simon Cowell today. Once the picture of invulnerability, he is now defined by vulnerability. His career isn't over. He still commands primetime television, but the narrative has changed. He is no longer just the villain who made people cry on stage. He is a man who has cried himself, who has suffered, who has grown old in front of millions. For fans, the shock isn't just in what he looks like now, it's in realizing that even Simon Cowell, the man who once seemed untouchable, is as human as the rest of us. Simon Cowell's story is more than just the rise and fall of a celebrity. It is a mirror reflecting the fragile nature of fame itself. At his peak, he embodied power, wealth, and control. His sharp words could create careers or destroy dreams. Yet now, as illness and age catch up, Simon reminds us that even the most commanding figures are still human, bound by the same limits of time and health as everyone else. There is something profoundly humbling about this transformation. Viewers who once feared his judgment now feel empathy, even concern. The villain of reality television, once booed and cheered in equal measure, has become a man audiences want to protect. That reversal says as much about us as it does about him. Culture no longer demands the cruel spectacle. Instead, it searches for humanity in those who once seemed larger than life. Simon's journey also raises deeper questions. How do we define success? For decades, his name was synonymous with dominance, top ratings, #1 records, endless headlines. But in this new chapter, his success is measured not by numbers, but by legacy. The artists he helped create, the shows that reshaped entertainment, and the personal growth that emerged from hardship. Perhaps the ultimate lesson of Simon Cowell's life is that control is temporary, but influence can last far longer. As the world waits for Simon Cowell, The Next Act, audiences are invited to reflect not just on his story, but on their own relationship with fame, power, and vulnerability. The same man who once symbolized ruthless ambition now embodies resilience and reflection. His voice may be quieter, his body weaker, but his impact remains. And that is why Simon Cowell continues to fascinate us. He is not simply the judge behind the desk anymore. He is a living reminder that no empire is eternal, no figure untouchable, and no life immune to change. In the end, perhaps Simon's greatest act wasn't making stars, but showing us that even stars must fade.